Please be advised that this recorded webinar has been edited from its original format, which may have included a product demo. To set up a live demo or to request more information, please complete the form to the right. Or if you are currently not on CSC Global, there is a link to the website in the description of this video. Thank you.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the October edition of our monthly Industry Updates webinar. My name is Stephanie Mitchell and I will be your moderator today. Joining us today are Fredrik Nilsson, Christopher Gustafsson and Ulla Lilsabas. Christopher is a business development manager and Fredrik and Ulla are digital brand consultants for the Nordic region at CSC. Today, the team will cover how to keep your digital presence secure, why it's important to choose the correct partner and the difference between enterprise class and retail grade providers, and finally look at solutions to keep you abreast of all the moving parts in your digital portfolio. I'll then give a quick update on upcoming activities, but first I will hand over to Fredrik.
Many thanks, Stephanie, and welcome everyone to this today's webinar, where I'm going to walk you through CCs Defense methodology. So I'm going to start with the second layer shown in teal here, and there is a specific reason for this, as promised. So this second layer involves making sure that you have access to the domain name and DNS management system. So CC requires two-factor authentication for all our customers. That can be done in a number of ways. It can be done through a two-factor key process, but it can also be done through federating our customers into our system so that they can log into their network and that would authenticate them into our domain management system. If your current registration system only requires a username and password, then that is the most basic level of security and that leaves you open to hacking. Don't leave your most vital assets vulnerable. As we say here, don't use a $1 lock on your $1 million house. The third gray layer on the diagram is to control user permissions. So at CC and with any enterprise class provider, they should have very granular levels of permissioning and access. When people get into the domain management system, it can be as innocuous as read-only to being able to change the DNS and zones for the most important domain names that power your business. So you need to have good control over that. And at CC, we will also alert you when those permissions change. And in many of these attacks, that's really important. Because when an attacker gets access to a registration system, they will either create a new user, change the permissions on an existing user so that they can do the damage that they want to do. The central layer of this defense in depth approach is to apply advanced security features at the individual domain level. The first thing is to identify the vital domain names that your organization has, and what we typically see is that this is somewhere between 10 and 15% of a company's domain portfolio are those crown jewel domain names that are powering your business, your websites, powering your email and all those other applications that we talked about. So once you have identified those domain names, then it's time to talk about applying the proper controls over them, things like Registrars. Locking that domain name at the registry level. It is a highly secure, highly effective way to make sure that an important domain name's DNS cannot be changed without the proper controls. DNSSEC is another control that you can essentially enables, which essentially enables authenticate communication between DNS servers. CA record, which stands for Certificate of Authority Authorization. So a CA record allows you to set an organization policy for certificates by designating a specific certificate authority to be the sole issuer of a certificate. It can also be multiple certificate authorities. So any attacker trying to hijack a domain name will in many cases try to get access to the system or issue a new digital certificate. With a CA record in place, if the attacker doesn't go to that certificate authority, then the request will automatically fail and an alert will be sent to you so that you know of it. And finally, DMARC, which essentially provides email authentication the same way as DNSSEC does at the DNS layer. So DMARC is very effective in preventing spoofing and frauds like BEC or BEC frauds. So I'm now going to talk about the outer layer, the blue layer. The reason I'm speaking about the last is because collaborating with an enterprise class provider is key to all of this. If you're not partnering with an enterprise class provider, one that has all of the technology, accreditations, and operations shown in this diagram in place, you will be unlikely to be able to have access to all of the other security protocols shown here, and will likely have a lower level of security in general for your digital assets. CSE is an enterprise class provider, meaning we only work with corporations, and we are set up to be able to deal with corporation scale security requirements. And with that said, I will now pass it over to Christopher, who will explain in a bit more depth why it is so important to partner with an enterprise class provider.
Thanks, Fred. That was a nice walkthrough. So from our perspective, there are 4 key differentiators between enterprise class providers and retail grade registrars. And these ones are focus, so focusing on enterprises rather than individuals or entrepreneurs. Number 2, solutions, being in the business of security and having the ability to provide enterprise level solutions. Support, having full service global solutions to suit global enterprises. And visibility, having a holistic view, enabling our clients to connect the dots and close any security gaps proactively. So I'm going to go through each of these ones one by one. So enterprise level registrars, as the name suggests, are focused on enterprises and therefore have the solutions in place to be able to meet the needs of organizations on an enterprise scale. As an enterprise level registrar, if we look at CEC's own mission and strategy, we show that we are focused on proactively providing security solutions. Through our technology and monitoring methodologies, we have a level of visibility that means that we can detect any blind spots and proactively suggest solutions or improvements. If we compare to a retail registrar, their focus is on individuals and entrepreneurs or small to medium organizations. The model that they use is based around low volume of domains from a higher number of individuals. And as such, this means that they don't have the ability to provide joined up solutions for larger enterprises that are more complex in their structure. Yes, they might have competitive pricing, but it's a case of you get what you pay for when it comes to support and advanced security features. So if we move on to the next area, solutions, this is really about being able to deal with the complexities of an entire organization. The defense in depth model that Fred went through earlier shows the level of security needed. That's just for one single domain. Then take a complex organization in different countries with different business units or different sub-brands with a domain portfolio in the thousands. Retail registrars are simply not set up to be able to deal with these complexities. Yes, the likes of GoDaddy, for example, are the largest registrar by volume, but as we said before, the needs of an individual with 1 or 2 domains are starkly different to a global organization. Action on security breaches is likely to be minimal and reactive, and even industry specialists have recently highlighted general vulnerabilities with retail-grade domain registrars, as you can see with this article from Spamhaus. Next up is support. At CEC, we have organizational infrastructure to be able to offer full support. This support has a variety of forms. Dedicated customer support and account management teams, where you'll know your name of your contacts. 24/7 escalation support, because cyber criminals don't sleep. Customized invoicing to suit the structure of your business, and data and insight analysis. Given that retail registrars operate this high volume, low cost model, they obviously cannot provide dedicated client service teams. So you'll go through a call center and maybe speak to 3 different people on 3 different occasions on the same issue. We've all been there with mobile phone or broadband providers, and it can be a nightmare. They are also not looking at your domain portfolio as a whole. Things will be done piecemeal, and just one lapsed domain could be disastrous. So finally, we'll look at visibility. This is key for a complex organization. You want your provider to be able to not just keep tabs on your portfolio of digital assets, but also be able to look at the bigger picture. For example, as the largest enterprise registrar, we have a list of whitelisted domains, meaning we know where fraud is happening. If an alert comes comes up as part of your branding monitoring program, we don't have to spend time finding out the root of the problem, i.e. the domain. We already have that information to hand from the whitelist, meaning you're protected quicker and more effectively. Retail registrars simply don't have this in place, full stop, because they accept registrations from anyone with the means to pay for it. They have no idea whether the registration is legitimate or not. It's an easy place for a cybercriminal to go and register a branded domain without having to prove they work for that organization. We've talked about the difference between retail and enterprise registrars as being with the latter alone is a key step in managing the security of a digital asset. But once you're with an enterprise class provider, how can you keep tabs on what's happening with them? Who has access to them, when certain things renew, how many you have, and so on. At CSC, our solution is called CCs Security Center. And now Olle will talk you through the key features.
Thank you, Christopher. So this is what the CCs Security Center homepage looks like. Security Center is a feature available to our clients, and it offers a one-stop shop dashboard showing all the information you need about your digital assets, and that helps you spot where there are potential risks to be assessed. The dashboard is focused on those domains in your portfolio that may be vital to your business. These are based on CC's proprietary predictive modeling algorithm with over 20 different attributes of a domain name that are assessed to help you identify whether a name is conducting business critical work for your company operations and for your online brand. For this segment, I'll go through each feature individually to give you an idea of how to manage and keep track of assets that are constantly changing, as well as why it's key for you to have an overview of this information. So the first scorecard we'll look at helps you mitigate the risk posed by unauthorized access to your vital domains. Elevated access rights for vital domain names inside your organizations are here fully visible, as is documentation on who has access, to ensure the appropriate security controls. Additionally, any permission changes for new as well as existing users are sent out via email alerts, allowing you to keep track and to guarantee that no unauthorized user gains critical access. Here, elevated access is defined as users with authority to make change to a portfolio that could potentially cause any type of downtime in functionality of your domain name. And tracking this allows your organization to ensure both that the wrong users don't have any access, as well as that legitimate users doesn't have the wrong type of access. Moving on to the next scorecard. Here we'll highlight data in order to help you reduce the risk of DNS compromise and disruption. On this scorecard, we highlight a number of key areas surrounding the use of your domain name system, or DNS. Shown on the summary is the number of DNS providers used. By going into the details, you'll also access a risk profile of each provider for each domain name. The summary of number of providers used will assist with compliance, and provides an updated overview of if there are any domain names that are using a faulty set of DNS servers, or DNS servers other than you have authorized for use as a company. The risk profile in the details section will flag domain names using a low-quality DNS provider, meaning, for example, one who does not guarantee 100% uptimes, and names that are flagged will likely be more vulnerable to things like DDoS attacks as well as other service interruptions. Within the dashboard, we'll also highlight whether vital domain names has specific security measures, such as registry locks or DNSSEC enabled. The portfolio at Security Center will constantly be monitored, and if new vital domain names were to appear or changes were to happen to existing vital domain names, it will be made visible within this space as well. So, highlight on this slide is the number of vital domain names utilizing the Domain Name System Security Extension, or shortly DNSSEC. So DNSSEC is a recommended feature that can be enabled to protect your website's visitors from things like forged DNS data, and it will help prevent attacks like DNS cache poisoning or man-in-the-middle attacks. The Multilock scorecard will highlight which vital domain names can utilize Multilock and whether or not they're currently doing so. We do this since not all TLDs today actually offer the service, and therefore we need to, from your vital domain list, highlight which can actually have it at all. Multilock is a feature that adds an additional layer of validation before any changes can be done to your domain name. This could, for example, be a change of DNS server to a critical domain name. If such a request is fully authorized within your organization, you can approve the domain name to be unlocked and the change will be implemented. If it is, however, unauthorized or placed by mistake, the Multilock allows you, as the final layer of security, to reject the request to unlock. And this mitigates against risks of being subject to the increasing type of attacks commonly labeled DNS hijacking, for example. For vital domain names with an existing MX record, the system will monitor whether the key email security records is in place. It will provide an updated overview of which names utilizes Sender Policy Framework, or SPF, Domain Keys Identified Mail, or DKIM, and Domain-Based Messaging Authentication Reporting and Conformance, or DMARC. This means that we'll look for the records that you need to have in place to create control of your own sender domains, and the means to prevent third-party attackers from using them in a spoofing scheme or to conduct BEC fraud. The final scorecard that we will review in today's webinar helps you assess the risk posed by digital certificates across your portfolio. Domains at risk can be assessed based on not having a digital certificate, having a low validation certificate, or using an untrusted issuance authority. Multiple digital certificate providers will increase the risk of expiration, neglecting to review, for specific domain names. This point about managing SSL risk across your portfolio is especially important now that the digital certificate life cycle reduced from 2 years to 1 year at the start of September. For this, we have a 4-step advice, which is to account, consolidate, secure, and automate. For the accounting part, ask yourself if your brand has full accounting of its digital certificates by answering these questions. How many and what types of certificates do you have? With which certificate authority are they registered? Who has permission to administrate these certificates? And when are the renewal dates for each certificate? If you don't have answers to all of these questions, you're at risk of having digital certificates that aren't accounted for. And as the frequency of replacing certificates increases, so does the risk of missing the replacement of vital assets supporting your online business operations. If this happens, you'll be unable to process secure transactions on that site, costing you traffic, revenue, and eventually consumer trust. The second step is consolidate. So CC advocates consolidating your digital certificates with one provider and using certificate authority authorization records to best manage your certificates and to control the permissions for issuing any certificates. Adding this type of records, also called CAA records, supports the consolidation of your providers and reduces the overall cost of management. Finally, it greatly reduces the risk of unexpected expiration, and this is a risk that obviously increases significantly when you have multiple providers. For secure, it's important to consider the validation level of your digital certificates and the impact it has on your consumers and their confidence in the security of your sites. At CEC, we recommend considering organization validation or OV certificates for your vital domain names, as these go through a 3-step verification process. There's also extended validation or EV certificates that has the most stringent verification criteria, but these can be more expensive and they will take longer to process. Both OV and EV certificates are preferable to domain name validated certificates or DV, which can be obtained by anyone with a credit card and who can be proven to own the domain in questions. The fourth and final advice is to look at automation. The easiest way to deal with the increased frequency of renewals is to automate. If you have an extensive portfolio of domain names after September 1st, your renewals workload will have doubled. Automated certificate monitoring, renewal and replacement will make your life easier, and it will avoid the risk of unexpected expiration. So that takes us to the end of today's webinar. But before we conclude for today, Stephanie will give an update on some upcoming CEC releases. Thank you.
Thanks, Ulla, and thanks to Christopher and Frederick as well for that informative session. So I just want to draw your attention to our upcoming activities. So our next monthly roundup newsletter will be sent later this month on the 26th of October. We'll also have a number of other webinars happening throughout November on a variety of topics. Our next Industry Updates webinar will be on the 5th of November and look at brand protection issues ahead of the holiday season. We'll also have the final webinar in our ICANN meeting recap series, where we look at the outcomes from the latest ICANN online meeting. And finally, we'll have a webinar looking at domain portfolio management and lapsing domains on November the 24th.